name's Bond. James Bond.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Bond vs. Godzilla, the podcast that compares and contrasts two of the longest-running film series in cinema history. My name is Cruz Moore, and I will be your resident Godzilla expert on this show. Joining me on this cinematic journey for however long it lasts are three of my very good friends who each have their own history and experience with both film franchises. Bond expert Jacob Roberts.
My name is Jacob Roberts, brought to you by a big red letter G.
Audio engineer Willie Crook.
Hi, I'm Willie, and I like to torture my friends with music that they hate.
And digital artist Chas Lemons.
I'm Charles Lemons, and don't forget to water your Biollante daily.
On today's episode, we'll be tackling The Living Daylights from 1987 and Godzilla vs. Biollante from 1989. So without further ado, Jake, give us a backstory on My, here come the fuzz.
The 1980s were defined by an increase of tension between the Eastern and Western powers. The policies of détente from the 70s had failed, and the superpowers were once again stockpiling nuclear weapons and engaging in proxy wars across the globe. This new decade was instigated by the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. The Soviet-Afghan War would continue for 9 years between the occupying Soviet forces and the Afghan resistance known as the Mujahideen, who were backed by anti-Soviet powers that provided them with arms and training. While the USSR would pull out of Afghanistan around the time of its dissolution, the last battle of the Cold War would have lasting consequences that continue even to this day. While at one point Eon Productions considered making their next film a prequel set in the 1950s, this idea was scrapped in favor of a new plot in which Cold War drama would be front and center. Afghanistan was the obvious setting, carrying with it themes of illegal arms deals, rogue Russian generals, and Western interference in the form of an American villain. The scene of Bond protecting a defecting Russian official from a sniper makes up the entirety of the original short story that the film is named after. With Roger Moore having retired from the role of James Bond, Eon Productions offered the role to Pierce Brosnan. However, he was unavailable because of his contractual obligation to Remington Steele. Their next choice was Timothy Dalton, who had previously rejected the role because of his youth. Dalton had become a fan of the original Ian Fleming novels, and wanted to portray a James Bond that more resembled his literary counterpart, as opposed to anything Connery or Moore did. Thus, we get a Bond who is much more blunt and crass than audiences were used to. While general reception of the Dalton films were mixed at the time of release, and even today Dalton is considered the most underrated Bond, this darker, grittier take of the character has grown more positive over the years, and both rank as some of my personal favorites.
So I think it's great to see that from the get-go, they don't seem to be stumbling in any way in the way that like Live and Let Die did with Moore's first installment. Like I feel like they're on the exact same track. They're just swapping this character or this actor in for this character, and they're also crafting the world's events into the story and kind of giving a history lesson at the same time.
Agreed. It took Roger Moore a little bit of time to find his footing, both with him and his personal actor portrayal of the character, as well as the writers and filmmakers wanting to get his decidedly different portrayal down. There was definitely some growing pains with the early Moore films. You don't get that with Dalton, which is good because there's only 2 films. But yeah, it definitely feels like, we have entered this new era. It's still late 80s. It's still John Glenn. So some of that Moore feel still carries over. But for the most part, the Dalton era is very much its own beast, separate from anything that comes before or after.
To the point where I feel like Dalton is almost like a 005. He's not necessarily James Bond because of just how different his character is and how a little bit more sinister.
It's markedly different. Like as I said, Dalton is going to be your closest portrayal to how he was for the most part in the books. And in the books, he wasn't sexy, charming, witty. He was gruff and blunt and crass. If you look at each actor as a different aspect of Bond's personality that forms into a total gestalt, Dalton is the killer aspect of James Bond. He is the part of James Bond who is the assassin, the spy, the saboteur, who will go in and fuck shit up.
Dalton is my favorite Bond. His next movie is my favorite movie of the franchise. I think I got a new love for him as Bond as well. Watching it this time, both partly with you guys and also on the big screen, because he just goes straight in he just immediate swap into spy killer mode, and I'm just like, I like that.
I really liked this one too, and it's I think it does help that he doesn't seem quite as silly or kind of played out or played up. He almost seems like how you kind of would imagine like a secret agent in real life, where he's very open and blunt in front of people that he currently trusts, and yet he's also always willing to make decisions on the fly. And he has like a personal code where although it's not quite revealed until a little bit later that his hunch was right, but you get the feeling that he's quick-witted and he's used to thinking on his feet.
He kind of seems like the most veteran Bond. Dalton comes across as a James Bond who has been in this business for seemingly forever, and he knows more than his co-workers that generally surround him. Shown effectively in the character Saunders, who's his station ally. And Bond's like, yeah, I'm way more experienced than you. I know what I'm doing better than you do. Shut up and stand back and let me do what needs to be done. I think in general, audiences just weren't ready for the type of films the Dalton films were. I think the Dalton films were a bit ahead of the times. They were made for an audience that would appreciate them later, as opposed to the audiences of the contemporary time, especially in Britain, I think. America, not as much, because America at this time was kind of going through its slasher movie renaissance, and so they were a bit more open to more grittier, bloodier kind of interpretations. I think British film goers were still not quite at that level to want to see such grittiness and displays of violence that the Dalton films do.
And yet they're still peppered with my favorite weapon so far, exploding milk bottles.
Oh, yes, the Molotov milk bottles.
And the ghetto blaster.
I love the ghetto blaster.
It had enough humor to it, I think.
Man, why was the ghetto blaster not even used? And they made
such a
little big deal out of it.
It was a gag. It was just a gag. All the Bond films, usually in the Q scenes, they'll have, gag gadgets in the back, just for a laugh. There's actually a funny story about the ghetto blaster. Not really about the ghetto blaster, but the ghetto blaster is involved. During filming, Princess Diana and Prince Charles visited the film set. Prince Charles got to be the one who pushed the button that fired the ghetto blaster. So when you watch this movie, you see the ghetto blaster fire. Prince Charles was the one to push the button. As part of filming, Princess Diana got to take a sugar glass beer bottle and smash it over the back of Prince Charles's head, and that actually became a pretty well known. The photo of her doing that got circulated all throughout the newspapers throughout the United Kingdom. It became a famous picture at the time. So that's just a cool thing that happened involving the royals.
I mean, can you imagine Dalton just like with the boombox on his side, just like.
Moore would have gotten away with
Yeah, he
it.
would've
Dalton
gotten away with it.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Oh my god! Just
Dalton as the actor would flat out say no.
Don't mind me. I'm just listening to my tunes here.
Although, just an alternate universe where who's the last one guy again? I'm so sorry.
Roger Moore.
Where Roger Moore is just walking around wearing Adidas pants and just with ridiculous sunglasses and a backwards hat.
Why,
Timmy
hello
Undercover.
there, fellow children.
Don't say it like that.
Why not?
I was just gonna say, Cruz, do you think it would be cool if
Do I need to get a flow chart to put up
Fassbender?
here with the name of every single Bond actor?
We've got a whiteboard.
Sure.
Just make an Animaniac song so you can remember.
Do you think
There is a Connery, Lazenby, Moore, and a Craig.
Cruz, do you think it would be cool if Timothy Dalton came back as a Bond villain with a mustache?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Just have him be like he played Rassilon in Doctor Who, and just have that be the Bond villain. I'd be 100%.
Rassilon didn't have
for
a
it.
mustache though. He needs a mustache.
No, he didn't, but he could still rock one.
Like he just comes back as the head of a NIMBY cult, like in Hot Fuzz.
The only reason why we keep referencing that is that I've only seen Dalton in Hot
Hot
Fuzz,
Fuzz,
and I've
yeah.
seen Hot Fuzz a million times. So
Baked into your brains.
yeah, I know pretty much every line from that. If we want to start with the comparison in the beginning, both of these movies have really groovy intro music.
Oh yeah, I
'Cause,
mean,
like we're in the '80s, and we're
I know
just-
I'm normally not a music guy, but this is an episode where I legitimately want to talk about the music of both of these films.
Yeah.
Because my God. Where are my notes? So the unique sound of this film was achieved by combining synthetic music overdubbed with orchestral music to kind of fit with the theme of the film with the orchestra, which was kind of an innovative technique at the time. And of course, two additional original songs were composed alongside the main title theme. Both of them were performed by the Pretenders, and the instrumental versions of the songs were used effectively for the character themes. You have Where Has Everybody Gone, which is Necros' theme, and If There Was a Man for Kara, which also plays during the closing credits, which makes this the first film in the franchise to have a different closing credits song other than the main theme.
And the fact that, like, now that we're in the 80s, they're tapping into Duran Duran, Aha, that Blondie one that we didn't get.
Oh, yeah, no. The Duran Duran song for A View to a Kill was a major, massive hit in the sale charts. And so originally the Pretenders were going to do the main theme for this film, but they decided to go with Aha instead because they were trendier. They wanted another, big pop hit. Famously, Aha and John Barry did not collaborate well together, which resulted in two different versions of the Living Daylights main theme, the one that plays in the movie and one that can be found on one of Aha's albums. I think the movie version is better, personally.
I think the more Bond themes we get, the better. Although I'd like to know your opinion on this. I feel like as much as I do love the intro song, I feel like the title sequence seems to like be borrowing from all the other ones that have come thus far.
I love Maurice Binder, who does most of the title sequences for the films. He does have his idiosyncrasies, and he does have his rhythms, and he does have his patterns. That the more of his work you see, the more you begin to recognize. I do think that the person who takes over after Maurice Binder for the opening titles does a much more fantastic job of tying the opening titles in with like the general theme of the movie they're in instead of just random naked girls dancing. So that's something to look forward to. Maurice Binder, the next film, Dalton's Last, will be his last title sequence that he does for the franchise. So we're definitely at the tail end of the grand works of Maurice Binder. While this is the first Dalton era, The Living Daylights does kind of serve as a sort of transitional period that kind of marks the end of many of the established elements from the previous films. This is the final movie scored by John Barry. He provided the score for the majority of the films ever since Dr. No. He does make a cameo in the film as the orchestra conductor. So whenever you see the orchestra, that is John Barry himself.
That's cool.
This film features the final appearance of two recurring characters that was established in the Moore era, Frederick Gray and General Gogol, who kind of together, these characters pretty much represented the Cold War conflict in a lot of ways. So them both leaving the franchise kind of also retroactively ties into the fact that, the Cold War will be ending, and this is kind of the last film that really deals with the Cold War as a major plot element. The role of Leonid Pushkin, the KGB general, the character was originally supposed to be Gogol as like his grand finale. However, Walter Gotel, the actor, was too ill to do the part, so they invented the character of Pushkin to replace him, and Gogol was given a cameo at the end of the film. Miss Moneypenny had to be recast for the first time following the departure of Lois Maxwell. So she is now played by Carolyn Bliss.
She definitely pulls off the thirsty approach.
I would say Carolyn Bliss is probably the thirstiest Moneypenny. The fact that she just gives that long, exasperated sigh when he walks away. Felix Leiter makes his long-awaited return after being absent from the series since Live and Let Die 14 years prior.
Hooray.
He is now played by a plank of wood named John Terry. The only other thing I know him from is Lost, so I really have I have that and this to know John Terry by.
Yeah, like as soon as he showed up, I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, that's Felix.
No.
This film, on top of all that, this film does feature one last returning actor from a previous film. Do any of you know who it was?
How many previous films?
It was in the Moore era, somewhat recent.
It's not Q.
Oh no, Q is a giveaway.
So a returning actor who's come before.
Are you saying like someone?
Yeah, there was someone in Living. There was an actor in The Living Daylights who appeared in a previous Bond film in the Moore era.
But just one.
Just one.
Okay.
But besides the regulars like M and Q.
Was it Whitaker?
No, but we will see that actor again later in the future.
That's okay. That's what I'm thinking. I think I remember when.
Was it one of the agents that was testing tech with Q?
No, it's a bit of an off-brand one.
Wait, is it a cameo or is it more of an involved role?
More cameo.
It's not John Rhys Davies because this is the first time that we've seen
Yeah,
him.
this is the first time. This is John Rhys Davies' only role.
Cruz is clearly doing the heavy lifting here, but wasn't
I
one
always
of
do the heavy lifting.
in this regard? Yes, you do.
In this room? What do you mean?
Was it one of the girls who escorted Bond to the FBI or to the CIA agent?
No, it was not.
Okay.
Everyone feels so new in this movie. I can't really think about it.
Any final guesses from you before I reveal it?
If I can hold on for like another 30 seconds.
They're the same character, right? Or actor?
No, different character.
Just a different actor.
Just same actor.
I would have no idea then.
It was the parrot in the kitchen. It was the same parrot that was using For Your Eyes Only.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, I feel like I could have gotten that one.
The same parrot that was using For Your Eyes Only.
Oddly enough, I saw that pair. I was like, I feel like we've seen them recently.
Yeah, it's the same parrot.
But, see, but that goes to show how much I just
Damn it.
didn't care for Your Eyes Only because I'm like, oh, that parrot, like in that one film, the parrot. I do love the fact that we get an amazing kitchen fight scene that Bond is not involved
No,
in
Bond.
at all.
It's just Necros versus this random security guy, and it is one of the most brutal things in the franchise.
That was really good. I love any kitchen fight scenes.
Kitchen fights are great because the kitchen is just an armory essentially.
Yeah, and it has that nice kind of Bond tendency to like kind of throw you through a loop with the fights. Like, oh, you think he's gonna hit him with the hot water, but he dodges the hot water somehow.
It was very well choreographed.
Oh my god. I just realized that Willie's in this movie. Because the assassin kills everyone while he's listening to music.
I think this is a good way to transition into character opinions. So, what do we think of the villains of the piece?
Well, I'm a little familiar with Joe Don Baker, mostly because of his bad movies that have been featured on Mystery Science Theater. So it is really cool to see him in a role that he can just...
Which one is that?
Oh, he's the big, fat military dude.
Yeah, he's the
Joe Don Baker played Brad Whitaker.
He's the arms dealer with weapons practically up his ass.
Okay.
Yeah. And I feel like he finally gets like a good moment to shine compared to what I've seen in him before. So, and then I read that he appears as different characters in the series.
Yeah, Joe Don Baker will appear later on in the franchise as a different character.
Yeah. If you ever want to see him awkwardly order a tall glass of milk as a smooth Texan, go watch those movies.
Nice.
It did feel like he did make the most of like getting his shot at like a bigger movie.
Yeah,
because like he did really lay into the role, and like I feel like for what he was given, he hammed it up just enough to be a fun Bond villain.
I really like Brad Whitaker. Sorry, go ahead.
For such a serious kind of thing, he played it up to an extent that he actually kind of made it fun.
he's almost like an American version of Goldfinger.
Exactly. That's what I was gonna say. Fuck you. Fuck you.
Fuck you.
God damn it! I want you.
Fuck you.
Like honestly, like Brad Whitaker he's like a mix, in my opinion, between Goldfinger and Max Zorin, in the sense that he's fucking playing with his toys with exploding fake explosives, saying if I was on the Civil War, I would have done it this way and crushed it.
He's a lot of fun.
Like he is the definition of like military LARPer gone real life.
Yeah.
I love his character, his personality, how over the top he is, the way Joe Don Baker just hams the character up. I just love the performance of it all. It is sad to say that he is kind of one of the more often forgotten Bond villains, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he and Bond don't encounter each other until the literal climax of the movie, until that final fight in the mansion. They never meet. And so this movie really misses that really strong Bond villain dynamic that I think honestly kind of hurts the movie a little bit. But in terms of Brad Whitaker, just as a character and as a Bond villain, he's just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, like I do kind of feel like we were like, I didn't realize it for a while, but I feel like we're missing a scene where like they're gambling together or something.
There's none of that.
And to me, it's partly why I like this movie. The two villains are background characters.
It kind of are. It does.
And I don't feel like that's that. But to me, it's like it hurts the movie if you're expecting a formula. I like how this movie kind of changed the formula in numerous ways, at least for this specific movie, and it did it really well. Like I really wish we had more Dalton movies.
Yeah,
it kind of makes up for it for like the characters that Bond works with, because he has a bit more fun characters.
This movie focuses a lot more on the espionage aspect.
It does.
It focuses way more on
It's more of a spy film.
how am I going to get to these guys and get back at them and get them.
And it involves like falsifying information, like making fake information, like tricking governments.
Yeah.
This is probably the spyiest Bond has been since From Russia with Love.
Like faking an assassination to basically help someone. Oh my god, I'm forgetting the word for basically betraying the country.
Defection.
Yeah, for defecting.
Putting the villains more into the background does allow the movie to kind of breathe when it comes to the relationship between Bond and Cara Malovi, which I think is probably one of the stronger chemistries and romances in the Bond franchise. I believe this is the first movie that, with the exception of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, that he is only with one woman throughout the entire film.
I mean, like, say what you want about Kara, like, but she does definitely have this air of somebody who, like, just wanted to, like, maybe get with somebody who would maybe help her out a little bit, and she ends up getting sucked into this, like, super spy international, like, what was that word you just reminded
Defection?
me of? Yeah, this whole defection scheme, and she's in way over her head. And then here comes Bond to kind of like be a little bit more of a gentle hand, even if he is blunt.
This film has enough breathing room that they could have that scene on the Ferris wheel, which, you know, a more tight script might have to scrap just because there's no time for it. Here, you know, we have time to kind of show this, you know, softer, slower side.
As much as I do enjoy just Bond existing with this woman and having a good time, I think ultimately by the end of it, I don't see any kind of connection or chemistry between these characters whatsoever. aside from being Bond, he is this guy who came in and said, I can protect you, I can buy things for you, I can take you here, here, and here. And apart from that, I don't see what else she falls for other than the fact that he's Bond.
In terms of...
The only thing going for her is that she plays a cello.
She plays a damn good cello.
Ooh.
Stradivarius.
Can you play a cello with a bullet hole in it?
Maybe.
I think not.
Maybe if I learned how to play the cello, I could.
You get the cello, you get the gun. Well,
Fuck.
In terms of what she can actually do and what she does, like I don't know, there's not a whole lot that I see in her.
I find it odd that you say this about her because she's an everyday person, just like in that in View to a Kill.
True, but I feel like she's very airheaded. I feel like there's nothing going
I
on.
mean, there are some people who are airheaded.
she's a little airheaded.
Like
And she does have this air of naivete about
Yeah.
her. But when push comes to shove, even if she does make a mistake from time to time, she is capable.
Yeah, she is.
She is when she's backed into a corner, she will fight and she will go above and beyond to do what she feels she needs to be done. I mean,
She'll take an AK right out of a guy's holster.
she'll take an AK out of the hands of a freedom fighter and rush off when none of the other men on horses will.
But when she gets there, she doesn't do anything.
Yeah, she kind of ends up hiding
Until she gets in the car, I guess. So, I mean, she does do something, but
Yeah, I mean, she's certainly not on the same level of proactiveness as some other Bond girls that we've seen before and we'll see
Crossbow.
later. Yeah, she's not gonna shoot a crossbow into a guy's back, but in terms of being a supportive role, she fulfills that very well, and her character is compelling enough that I would rank Kara as one of in the upper echelons of Bond girls, personally.
see, once again, like, I know he's Bond, but the whole thing on the Ferris wheel and like, oh, it was me that stopped this Ferris wheel because I want to get you in here by yourself and you can't escape. And it's like, ugh.
I mean, like, by that point, they're kind of having a nice night, so that does kind of, like,
I know, but
tinge
that's
it a
just
little
like-
bit, but...
Cruz, don't
What?
think, just let it happen.
That's exactly it. It's like, that's the creepiest thing to hear.
Jake, you're not helping
in
your
a
case.
in enclosed space with this man.
Clarify one thing for me. How did they do the trick where they made it look like she walked into the phone booth, but she actually was getting in the car with Bond?
That's called having a bus pass by and then see
Oh.
the shot.
It was a combination of movie magic editing, which was a
You
big
see, the
part
bus
of it.
went in front of the frame, and then they swapped it,
Okay,
and there you go.
Okay, I guess
Yeah.
I just forgot about the bus or something.
Yeah, it's a movie. Yeah, no, she goes in. There is a bus that trolley car that moves in front of it, and there's even a jump cut where it jumps from that frame to a close up of the KGB guy watching. So there is editing there.
You see, there's this thing called object permanence.
God, where did Cruz go?
How did you do that?
But there is some really cool movie trickery they did for a lot of stunts in this. For driving the Jeep up the plane ramp, she just drove that up the ramp of a truck, like a furniture truck.
I mean, they did have an amazing car chase that like kept transitioning from every object you can imagine for the car weaponry, and then going down the slopes.
Such a good chase.
I really
Yeah.
like Dalton as he's like saying, yeah, I paid for some extra upgrades on this.
What's cool about Dalton is that he insisted on doing as many of his own stunts as he could get away with, which means that for a lot of like the big stops, they could afford closer in shots of Dalton as Bond is actually doing the stunts, which I think really adds to the more kind of gritty, action-packed spectacle of this movie. A lot of the action is performed more close up as to being, pulled back from a distance because they're using stunt doubles.
Well, let's talk about the stunt that like made Chaz be on the literal edge of his seat, and that's watching two stuntmen hanging out of a fucking plane off of a net.
Yeah, let's do that.
Best stunt ever.
And so how much?
And
of,
then the net opening and a bunch of stuff flying out of it.
So good. Okay. So yeah, the stunt was performed by B.J. Worth and Johnny Lombard, Mr. Lombard. I was gonna say Mr. Lombard, so I don't have to correct myself. So these are the same guys that have been doing all of like the badass aerial stunt work since like Moonraker. So like everything that happens in the sky, it's these two guys just being total absolute badasses. Once again, parachutes hidden in the clothes. You know, there were some close-ups of Dalton that was picked up in the studio and some other stuff. Love the reaction you guys had when, you know, after you know, he cuts the boot, Necros falls to his death, Bond has to climb back in. You see the net, which is now mostly empty, just bobbing with the wind force.
Yeah.
And you can see the point where the net goes all the way up, and you can see the stuntman almost hit his head on the underside of the plane, and you guys just gas at that. I'm just like, yes. So yeah, that was certainly a close call with that. It's from what they say. But I believe that was B.J. Worth filling in for Dalton there. That his head did come very, very close to hitting that undertail.
It's one of those things where it's like you put yourself in the situation. It's like, how are you not clawing onto that thing like a cat and screaming the whole time?
Yeah, it's like it's just scary shit.
It's because of the parachute and also hoping
Even
that
with
it
a parachute,
works.
I'd be like, fuck.
Yeah, no.
but that's the thing. It's like,
Human survival instinct is more powerful than a parachute.
yeah.
It did have one of the better dialogue exchanges as well. It's like, what are you doing? Like, I have to disarm a bomb. Now what are you doing? I have to
Gotta
drop a bomb.
Yeah. Dalton, like you know, say what you will about Dalton. You know, he may not be as quippy as Moore, but he can drop a one-liner.
Even dialogue as simple as there's something special about Timothy Dalton just straight up saying, no way.
You know, it's funny because like I normally hate that gag of there is no way I'm going to
I
do
love
this.
that gag.
Jump cuts to doing this. That gag a lot of times doesn't work for me. It always gets me here. It always gets
Yeah.
me.
We don't have time. I'm not going to go get you your cello, goddammit.
So it's anyway, they got the cello.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's got a bullet hole in it now, but it still works.
some great editing
So
for that.
plays apparently.
Don't worry, it's just like, what's her name?
Kara.
It's just like Kara. Beautiful on the outside, hollow on the inside.
Oh. So,
All right, and now I'm
and
shutting down and
needs a
removing
bullet.
everything.
so
So I've deleted all of the recording.
speaking of the cello case, there's my other favorite sequence in the movie is the cello case sled.
Which was beautiful.
It's so
Yeah.
great. So they pretty much built a sled shaped like a cello case. Mariam Dabo, who played Kara, was in charge of the steering. All the steering mechanisms were on her side of the sled because her hand was farthest away from the camera with Dalton on the front side of the camera. So all the steering was on her side of the sled. She hated it.
I can't imagine why.
She hated filming those scenes. Yeah, I can't imagine why.
I mean, the thing I like about that scene is like each parts of the car just like start failing, and then they basically bail out of that, set it to self-destruct, and then they use the case, and it almost kind of feels like a Looney Tunes scene where they're kind of like they're just taking things. And
It
just
is
putting it under
definitely
their feet.
it is definitely the most Roger Moore scene in the movie.
That's why it felt familiar.
Yeah. Well, there was another scene as well. There was a deleted scene when right after Bond fakes the assassination of Pushkin and he is escaping the Moroccan police on top of the rooftops in Tangier. There's a deleted scene of him escaping the police by essentially putting this stiff look. Essentially, it's supposed to look like he's putting a carpet upon like these telephone wires and riding the carpet as it slides down, so it looks like Bond is riding a magic carpet. The scene was cut because it honestly looks like shit. You can see it on the DVD, but it's just a deleted scene of Bond just flying on a magic carpet.
Oh my god, that does look like shit already.
It looks so bad.
Oh no!
This is gonna be awesome. What are you talking about? That looks awesome. What are you talking about? No, no, it looks great.
It's so campy. It looks like
Yeah, that's what you do. There you go. Yeah. Electric wire carpet riding soon took off.
wow. I can't believe you're both right. It looks like shit.
No,
and
it
it's
looks great. One jump ahead of
Oh, you just love sucking Aladdin off. I feel
Riff
like
raff, street rat, scoundrel. Take it. Look at that.
Cruz, you're making me sick of musicals.
Just
and I guess I haven't tested that, but here we are.
Guys.
That's amazing.
For me, I would just say that like this movie starts off really great. It loses itself in the second act, I feel, and then by the time we get to the third act, I feel like you can't go wrong with explosions in the desert. It's tapped into that Lawrence of Arabia.
It's one of
vibe,
my
and I
favorite
really
third
enjoyed it.
acts,
Yeah,
I think.
it was a lot of fun.
I mean, it can definitely contains one of my favorite. I think my favorite line in the film is, "James, we're free. Kara, we're in a Russian airbase
Yeah.
in the middle of Afghanistan."
You stupid fuck. I think there's a lot of great lines in this movie, but I think one of them that stands out that all of us were like, whoa, it's just, we had trouble at the airport.
Yeah, as Chaz mentioned, that joke didn't age poorly at all.
Yeah.
Oh,
We will always be allies.
Yes,
Cut
awkward
to
it is,
11
it's
years
just
later.
me. So while this is normally Cruz's shtick, I did want to go over a list of translations of foreign titles for this film.
Awesome.
I was joking, actually.
Because
I will say that this film actually does have a clever title drop.
it does have it is the complete opposite of A View to a Kill's title drop.
Yeah.
It's actually fluid and natural.
Yep.
And it's not said by Christopher Walken.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's a title drop that came verbatim from the original short story. Imagine that. Because the original short story is pretty much the whole scene of protecting the defecting general from one side of the street to the other while taking on a sniper across, that sniper battle thing. And it is a beautiful woman, and Bond does just shoot the gun out of her hand and later says, whoever she was, I must have scared the living daylights out of her. That's the entire short story.
Whoever she was must have scared the living daylights.
Must have
out of her.
scared A View to a Kill out of her.
Jake, is that the reason for the title? I never quite understood why it was called The Living
Yeah,
Daylights.
because of the line, whoever that was, I must have scared the living daylights out of him.
Oh, okay.
But apart from that, I don't think it connects to
No,
anything
it's
else,
that was just the name of the short story. Some titles from other parts of the world, they're little translations. From Denmark, Spies Die at Dawn.
That's a good one.
What?
You'll see
But when
why
they're mating, they might die at dusk.
you'll see why I wanted to go through these.
That sounds like a good spin-off kind of title.
That's a good. From Italy, Danger Zone.
Really tapping into the 80s there.
From Spain and Portugal, 007 High Tension. From France, Death is Not a Game. From Finland, 007 and the Danger Zone. From Sweden, Ice Cold Mission, which makes no sense. There's only one action scene in the snow.
This movie, most of this movie, is the opposite of cold.
Yeah. From Poland, Facing Death. From Chile, His Name is Danger. From West Germany, The Touch of Death. From Israel, 007 in the Dangerous Zone.
Hi!
From Brazil, 007 Marked to Die. From Norway, In the Line of Fire.
Isn't that a whole nother movie, though?
And from Croatia, Breath of Death.
That's good. I like that.
So there we go.
So why?
How come you
were
get
there
to do alternate
alternate-
titles now?
The Living Daylights is an English idiom.
Yeah.
So
I
the
get that,
the name
but-
wouldn't translate to other languages, so they had to
Like-
come up with a name.
But why did so many of them use Danger Zone?
I have no idea, but I love it.
I mean, you try to come up with an alternate title for The Living Daylights when Scaring the Living Daylights doesn't exist in that language.
I don't know why Danger Zone, but I fucking love it. So Living Daylights was the 25th film anniversary for the series. And to celebrate that, they put Bond behind the wheel of an Aston Martin for the first time since On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Oh, really?
The house that was used for Whitaker's mansion in Tangier once belonged to billionaire Michael Forbes. It was known that he owned a massive collection of toy tin soldiers in the house, which inspired the final confrontation against Whitaker.
Cruz and I noticed this during the movie, but we couldn't help but feel like all of the wax sculptures looks like a Michael Myers impression of all of these like horrific war leaders.
Correction, Mike Myers.
Oh, yeah, Mike Myers. Same, the Canadian.
Yeah, for some, I don't know, were they supposed to be modeled after
Yeah,
Joe
they were
Don
supposed to
Baker?
look like Joe Don Baker.
Right,
Yeah.
and yet they look like Mike Myers.
The idea is that Brad Whitaker created those models in his own image.
Okay, lending even more strongly to his very cosplay-y attitude.
Yeah, the fact that he's faking the entire military pretense.
Yeah, like he basically failed out of like basic
Point,
military
yeah.
At least
academy.
his wax sculptures make more sense than Christopher Lee's. I do like the fact that Joe Don Baker kind of references the first film where Connery goes, "You've had your 6," and he's like, "You've had your 8."
Yeah, I'm confident that was supposed to be a direct callback.
That's cool.
Sorry, a callback to what now?
In Dr. No, when Bond assassinates the geologist, and the villain tries to re-pick up his gun and shoot Bond, but it's empty. And Bond says, "That's a Smith & Wesson, and you've had your 6," then shoots him.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure you've had your 8, and I'll have my 80s. I'm pretty sure that's
great.
I'm pretty sure that's a deliberate callback. The action scenes at the Moroccan desert, which doubled for the Afghanistan air base, the climax was so intense that Cubby Broccoli brought on his cousin, who's a surgeon on set for emergencies. Oh, wow. He was only needed once. One stuntman fell off a horse and needed to have surgery. Barbara Broccoli served as the nurse during the procedure because no one else was available. But while the surgeon was on set, several members of the crew did have him perform cosmetic surgery while they were there, like removing moles and shit.
Oh wow, that's kind of a riot. So Jake, a quick question, another mechanical question. What was up with that pneumatic door? I'm guessing that's something that hasn't been used too much for the reasons shown in the movie.
The pneumatic door
Like at Final Destination.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's like something from Final Destination, except there wasn't a premonition about it.
Yeah, the pneumatic door is something that, as a child, greatly confused me. Like, how did Necros manage to kill this guy with a door?
With music.
Like he pushes a button, there's an explosion, the door closes really hard, shatters, and then he's dead. Like, the movie doesn't do a super good job of showcasing exactly what happened. I think that the idea is, like you said, the pneumatics of the door is what killed him.
Like my guess is that he blew the mechanism that pulls the door, and then it's not like a straight air tank. It's just like maybe like something a little bit more flexible, and so it's basically just being pulled back. And so once that mechanism blows, it just slams shut.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more bizarre deaths in the franchise. Saunders, he gets killed by a door.
Yeah, although it is followed by Bond almost shooting a kid with balloons.
So, it balances out.
Talk about how I'm almost positive that Willie's being inceptioned every day of his life. He's having fake memories implanted in his
Possible. Either that or he's like quantum leaping without realizing it. Mm-hmm. Just every day he wakes up in a slightly altered parallel universe.
Willie's yearbook quote was, "I could have sworn."
I already graduated.
Could have sworn I graduated 3 years ago. Is this quote like in black and white, like an old TV show with like 30-minute segments in between it?
Was it in Mexico in the 1980s?
That wasn't me remembering it. That was me talking about the Uber.
How do I know that you even had an Uber today, Willie? How do I know?
It was yesterday when I went to the theater. How else do you think I got there?
Willie, they pick on my mental foibles. What makes you think you're immune?
No one is immune. It's starting to spread like mind cancer. At the end of Godzilla 1985, Godzilla tragically falls into the volcanic mouth of Mount Mihara, supposedly sending him to his final resting place after 30 years of movie history. Or so we thought. Producer Tomoyuki Tanaka was as eager as ever to continue the film series, most notably by focusing on the monster versus monster theme. In 1985, Toho put ads in Japanese newspapers asking for story ideas for the next sequel. 5,000 entries were submitted before the winner was chosen, written by science fiction writer and dentist Shinichiro Kobayashi. The winning story was Godzilla vs. Biollante, a story that saw Godzilla returning to fight a bioweapon created from Godzilla cells, roseflower cells, and the cells of a scientist's deceased daughter. The story moves away from the dangers of nuclear technology and focuses on the modern themes of biotechnology, national military competition, and psychic powers. Toho would unfortunately lose $3 million on the picture, and it's seen as one of the less popular of the series. That is, until a Japanese survey in 2014 named Godzilla vs. Biollante as the best film in the series. And for me, it's part of my top 10 list and my favorite versus film of the Heisei era. So, what did you guys think of Damn, It's Godzilla?
Honestly, it felt a bit like a fever dream to me.
What doesn't, Willie?
See, the thing is, this has been my opinion of it this whole time, and after what we've been talking about, I knew you were going to fucking say that. But, like, it was like...
Yeah, it's a little out there.
It was... The beginning of it was jumping around a lot. Like, there was a lot of... I don't know if they were just time skips or location jumps.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're here. Okay, so now we're back. So now we're here.
Yeah, we go from the ruins of Tokyo to a ship to Saradia, then back to Japan, and then just it goes pretty swiftly.
And then when the monster finally shows up, it just kind of stands there menacingly.
And beautifully.
But and it's like, and it does
majestic.
things, and it just feels like the movie just happened, and I don't fully know what I watched.
I mean, like, to be
What's more of a fever dream, Smog Monster or Biollante?
I would say Smog Monster is probably a bit tighter in terms of its
Which is saying a lot.
presentation.
Yeah, like Biollante was just.
I think a lot of Biollante's issues could be kind of comes down to editing issues.
So, like, to be fair, like in Biollante, the editing for the human story is like very tight, but like in a way that it kind of
felt
doesn't let you
like-
breathe.
It felt like they wanted to get the human plot, rapid fire so we can get to the monsters, but ironically, this is a very multi-layered and fully laden human plot that probably needed some room to breathe.
That's probably why they felt like they had to like make the scene so short.
Yeah, so let's think about how many main characters are in this. That
It took me about half the movie, or at least longer than usual, for me to narrow down who's who.
Right. So since he seemed to be your guys' favorite character, let's go Seradian Agent.
The most
Yeah.
80s
Let's
man in the
go
world.
The Scientist. We kind of need to remember his daughter Erica in order to be plot relevant. Miki Sagusa, her psychic friend, the cool military dude that looked like George Lopez, the one guy that looks like the guy from Shenmue, as Chaz said, the one dude that's hitting on the psychic chick and wants to move to
Massachusetts.
Thank you,
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
One of the only things I remembered, because I was just like, why Massachusetts?
That's about 8 characters
So
who...
we can hear how funny it sounds in a Japanese accent.
Yeah, I do like how you pointed out, like, why do we keep referencing America? And it's because by the time we get to the late 80s, early 90s, Japan is starting to become a little bit more inclusive and adapting. Like, we can globetrot a little bit and have more influences rather than just be Japan focused.
Like, I have to imagine that would be partially in play because of Japan's economic growth and
Yeah.
how much their products were just starting to be seen all over the world.
Yeah.
What definitely felt like a fever dream is how many characters in this movie speak English, and you can tell that they know how to speak English, and they don't have an accent, and they sound like that they probably are fluent in English. However, you can tell that they're still obviously going off of a Japanese script, so it's just slightly, just a smidge off English.
Can't wait! I can't wait till we get more of that in the series.
Yeah, like
So
that was the other big part of the fever dream was just and we were watching.
It's like, I understand what you're saying, but no one would say it that way.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but the captain's up there is saying you're saying something different.
That was another layer of it too.
Yeah.
So here's the context for it. As much as I wanted to show them the dub version, the mono soundtrack, as fans will know, for the 90s films, as funny as it is, just has really poor sound quality, especially in a movie theater setting. So we went with the Japanese original language, the subtitles for the dub version, which I find are a bit more accurate and funny, but this film also has Japanese speakers speaking English in order to be a little bit more inclusive and expansive, but we also have Japanese subtitles as well for the English language that they're speaking. So it's
because
a
if you have
whole
a person speaking English with the Japanese subtitles provided for the fluent Japanese speakers that would obviously be watching the film, plus the subtitles of the dub, which are pretty much translating the Japanese that is translating the English. So it's literally like a Google Translate Ouroboros.
Now imagine going into this film not having seen it or knowing anything about it, and as soon as you hear the news reporter speaking English, you go, "What the fuck? I chose the Japanese dub. What's going on?"
That threw me off.
It threw me off. I was confused for like 3 seconds until I just convinced myself to let it go because it's Cruz. I know Cruz.
Cruz knows what he's doing.
Cruz knows
right?
what he's
In
doing.
here.
Cruz
Yeah.
picked the best possible option.
Until he
I'm
runs
just-
up to the booth and goes, "Fuck."
Yeah, no, it took me like 3 seconds, just turn my brain off, don't think, let it happen.
Like it feels like watching a movie sandwiched between two subtitles.
It was quite an experience.
We
the
also
thing
had
is-
the Comanche dub for Godzilla versus Biollante. So one of the complaints for Biollante is the strange inclusion of a secret agent terrorist subplot. The serendipity of our podcast continues to show as, by 1989, James Bond continued to be a popular film series in Japan, and it didn't help that director Kazuki Omori grew up loving the 007 movies. The film opens with Japan's recovery effort after 85's rampage, secretly interrupted by American agents killing Japanese scientists and stealing Godzilla tissue, only to then be killed by a Seradian agent who wears his sunglasses at night. All of which is scored by a groovy rock and roll rendition of Akira Ifukube's Godzilla theme. Welcome to the late 80s, early 90s, gentlemen.
Fucking love the music in this film. Can I
Yeah.
can I just
Thank you.
gush about the music in this film? Like every time there was like all these rock and synth renditions of the Godzilla theme. There's just like I'm normally not the music guy. I normally don't really pay attention to music, but the music in this film just, oh my God, it was so good.
Like both of these movies had really good music, and I thought Jake was about to segue into this because he seemed to he was doing the Superman fly out of the
No,
theater.
shut up,
and,
Superman.
and that is the almost uncannily Superman-esque music playing during some of the action scenes.
Before we get to the Superman bullshit,
It is uncanny. I'm sorry.
I just want to say that I love Koichi Sugiyama's score. It doesn't possess the theatrics of Akira Ifukube, but it does exactly what I love this series for, and that's experimenting and doing something different. And that's why this score works so well. The highlights are these creeping violins throughout the whole thing, especially with the opening shot of the cells and it zooms out to reveal Godzilla. The whole film has these creeping strings that accentuate the fact that Biollante is this kind of weird bioorganic creature that has evolved. And then, of course, you have the rock version of Godzilla's theme, which I personally love it because, once again, this series experiments and takes chances, and I really enjoy it for that. Aside from... Okay, wait. Look up who did the Superman theme. Because as much as I hate you guys comparing that,
It is uncanny.
in the unauthorized biography of Godzilla.
That was John Williams.
God damn it!
All right, Cruz, what were you about to exposit?
So the author of that biography book, Steve Reifel, does write, the score is terrible. It's very reminiscent of John Williams because it sounds like the Superman score and the Jaws score as well. But as a criticism, like, if this is the closest we can get to John Williams scoring a Godzilla film, I have no problem with that.
I failed to understand the point where trying to emulate John Williams is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the people who don't like the score of this film are just wrong.
Yeah.
Hearing something that
Tell
sounded
that to the panel I was at with a bunch of people talking about Biollante.
It was a panel full of wrong people. I certainly wouldn't have memed on it as hard if it didn't was just such a reaction out of you.
Yeah.
That, and we're panning back to space as well. So yeah. But I mean, even the faint score when when the scene is changing to the psychic development center, it has these creeping strings and these quiet horns, and it works so well. It has this creepy vibe to it.
Anytime they went to the Super X and they had the like it just sounded like military march. It just sounded off to me, and I don't know why.
You see, that's genius because that part of the score is there to help illustrate the fact that the Super X2 is a total pile of shit and sucks a major ass. So it's all part of the theming.
and serves to at most mildly blind Godzilla for a fraction of a second.
Well, before we move on to the Super X2, let's finish with the music.
Okay.
So I'm glad you all enjoy the score for the most part.
Loved it. I think it's my favorite score in the franchise.
Oh yeah, I think it's the strongest so far.
Oh
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you all for saying that, because Akira Ifukube did not think so.
Another wrong person.
So Akira Ifukube's opinion on Biollante goes as follows. My impression of Godzilla vs. Biollante is a negative one, both in terms of the direction and the music. The music that is heard for the scenes that take place in Saradia are just ridiculous. During the production of Godzilla vs. Biollante, Toho asked for permission to use some of my music in the film. I said that I would allow its use as long as it was not turned into popular music. Toho agreed, but just before Godzilla vs. Biollante was completed, a Toho representative came to me and said, well, your music was turned into popular music. So, most notably about the score, Akira Ifukube's daughter was so disappointed with the movie's score that she personally asked her father to return to the series, which led Ifukube to scoring the rest of the Heisei series.
Some good came out of it.
Yeah. And he does do tremendous work when he returns, but Biollante still has a wonderful score. The Super X2. Godzilla writer Steve Reifel put it best when he described it as, the Super X2 could have been interesting if it were part of a secret military program, if there were difficulties perfecting the technology, or, gasp, if there were people inside of it.
Yeah, it's just kind of controlled like a
Remotely.
It took for them to say, "Can we get it back to base?" For me to be like, "Oh, they're not in it."
Yeah, there's just one guy at command who's just controlling it via Wi-Fi or something.
Click, 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 click,
Good old
click, click,
Wi-Fi.
click.
Yeah.
He was using an Atari controller.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
pretty sweet. I honestly forgot as an adult that there weren't any people in it, and then rewatching it, I'm like, oh yeah, the Super X.
It wouldn't be as weird if the previous film didn't hammer in the point that the previous Super X was a manned vehicle. And so we jumped to the X2, and now it's remotely piloted.
Well, that's because it's X2. It's new and
I
improved.
mean, maybe like in the story, like they just were a bit too distraught by having to pull out the previous remains of the crew.
I mean, it slightly lowers the stakes because if Godzilla destroys this thing, no life is lost. I mean, I didn't like the original Super X, but I at least appreciate that, there was human life at risk with this thing fighting Godzilla. This is just Godzilla versus, your little remote control helicopter.
Yeah,
if it goes down, who cares? And that kind of takes away from the fight, especially considering how much of the runtime that the Super X2 actually kind of takes up. it pretty much steals the entire show from Biollante for the entire, middle of the movie.
It really does, and like to give credit to the previous Super X, it at least managed to take down Godzilla once.
It at least had bombs.
Super X took him down with cadmium bombs.
Yeah, it had bombs. That's why it worked.
Yeah,
Wonder Lizard is down for the count.
X2
Super X.
didn't have bombs. That was his main problem.
Yeah.
Well, it had the missiles, but I'm gonna
Those
find
aren't bombs.
I'm gonna commission a Super X plushie and I'm gonna hug it, and it will never hurt anyone.
Aww.
No, this thing just
Super
had
X2, I don't really care for, but I love the first one.
Like it does look a little bit more generic looking, but I think it's like kind of rolls with the fact that it's supposed to be like a better iteration of it.
But it's okay, gentlemen, because Super X will return.
Oh, wonderful.
The Super X3. Okay, let's go.
So people criticize Amori's script for having too many ideas in one setting. However, his script laid the groundwork for several plot elements that continue throughout the series. Like I said, the Super X comes back. We're introduced to Miki Sagusa, who appears in every Heisei film. She was the psychic girl.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yep.
I mean, I'm kind of happy to hear that she comes back, considering how little she did in this film.
You be nice to
Like,
Mickey.
Wait a minute.
Like,
Is she in?
She had the least amount of lines, but it feels like she had the most impact.
I mean, if this
That's
film,
what I like to think, yeah.
if this film
I
serves
can't
to
see her. You can water bottles in the way.
Wait, what?
I can't see her.
Excuse
There
me.
she is. Hey.
Hey, there's
I
that
mean,
object permanence we were talking about.
if this film serves to like kind of set her up for later appearances and things like that, I'm pretty okay with it.
Yeah, she's a fan favorite, and I think she's awesome. As much as she did seem to be kind of the butt of the joke for this viewing, because it's like she's just drawing a giant rose, and Chaz is like, "Your premonitions suck."
I was like, I think that's a pretty cool picture considering what she's drawing on. Come on.
Well, okay, I mean, like like looking back, yeah, it's cool, but it's like it just looks like she's just drawing a picture of a carnation. It's just like, what should I buy stocks in carnations? Should I get you some ice cream? What do you want?
I mean, they already know Biollante is a thing. They've seen it, and you see that like, oh.
But we didn't see it
No,
in
not
its
yet,
rose
yeah.
petal form yet.
Like, why is she drawing a rose? Oh, big rose.
The big plant.
We did see this rose for its first appearance was
Wasn't
that.
it like right after
No, it was
that
before.
though?
It was before.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the Levian rose.
Chaz also compared Miki Sagusa to a scanner, and that kind of makes me feel like she could blow up someone's head. The series is both, you can either laugh at it or, be moved by it, and the scene where she is just staring Godzilla down can be laughed at, but as like a kid, I thought it was like, wow, this is...
I like
this is a woman going up against Godzilla using
I like
her
that
brain.
scene.
Yeah.
I would say that is the one scene that I really appreciate her presence, where she did have a big impact on the story, because she made him pretty much change targets, which was a major plot element. But yeah, no, the entire rest of the film, she was just kind of there to just like be psychic and drop some awkward exposition.
That's Mickey.
And to recruit people into the Akira program.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite scenes in the Godzilla series. It's just, okay, children, let's see what you dreamed of, and just entire
that
class
scene
of
was
Godzilla
cool.
drawings.
That scene actually
that was cool.
Because that's when the music finally kicks back in.
the part that makes me laugh the most about it is the face that the girl
Yeah,
makes. She's just like,
oh shit.
I mean, because that scene is slightly silly, but it also carries with it some gravitas that you go to these kids who fiction always depicts as being sensitive to these kind of things, and so you get this sense of this psychic episode that's going over all these children. Like imagine just being a teacher. Whatever, for your kindergarten students or whatever, you say, okay, show your drawings, and like every single kid in the class all drew a volcano erupting.
Right.
That'd be creepy as fuck.
Yeah, it's kind of like being the teacher who like has the one student and you're really concerned because they're drawing pictures like from The Ring, except it's everyone in the class and it's a fucking kaiju.
Yeah, that'd be really fucking disturbing.
Yeah, that's why I love it.
the only thing that would make it more disturbing is if they were all pieces of one big picture of a volcano erupting.
Okay, Stranger Things season 4. That, and it's a nice little callback that even though Godzilla's the villain again, he was like a friend of kids in a way to the old movie. So
he maintains that connection to children.
yeah.
Yeah, which is nice because his suit in this movie is fucking the amazing suit that still kind of has like the cute-ish features that still he still looks badass.
His tongue reminded me of the tiger tongue from Casino Royale, though.
Which is funny because he kind of has that kind of like kitty muzzle, but he still is very lizardy and he looks so good in this movie.
Guys, seeing this movie and seeing how good the suit is, I remembered saying how good the suit looked in the previous film. And I think something about his depiction this time looks even better.
Yeah, I know, right? Like they either touched up the suit or
or the way they filmed it. There's just something about it that's just like, oh my god, this is the best Godzilla has looked so far by a fucking mile.
Yeah. Like Cruz mentioned to me before we started recording that the Japanese self-defense force lended a lot more footage for this movie, and that definitely shows. But another thing is just like when the scenes when Godzilla's in the water, the boats look incredibly real, and also the ocean just like is shot in a way that like it looks incredibly massive. Like the Toho pool is a real ocean.
Yeah, they don't obviously look like models. It kind of harkens back to the model work that was done in The Spy Who Loved Me, making this studio pool look like the goddamn ocean.
So moving on to the special effects and Godzilla costume, we're also introduced to special effects director Koichi Kawakita and his tremendous work on the Heisei series by bringing the special effects to an impressive modern-day level. Koichi insisted on no stock footage, giving the monsters unique powers and giving the military unique weapons, and giving the monsters a second form or stage to evolve into in order to enhance their design.
Yeah,
which is
final
why
boss
Biollante
form.
evolved.
Yeah.
When asked why so much of the action had now turned into shooting beams at each other for the Heisei series, Kawakita commented, it would almost be impossible for the monsters to wrestle with each other because of their tremendous size and weight. They would also seem too human if they wrestled with each other.
But they still kind of wrestle anyway, and it looks great.
I do see that. I do, part of me will miss the kind of pro wrestler kind of feel that the previous era had with the monsters doing like flippy dips and drop kicks and, wrestling moves against each other, which always looked really fucking cool.
Godzilla riding his tail and doing a jump kick.
Oh, hell yeah. So part of me is going to miss that. But, at the same time, I am totally for, giving these monsters more unique and imaginative powers beyond just big.
And last but not least, the other special effects edition that Kawakita is known for, the use of a fuck ton of glitter. Every Heisei film going forward will feature glitter of some kind used during the fight scenes, so take a shot every time a monster, to quote Stephanie, glitters them to death.
Sorry, Cruz, I want to keep my liver, but unfortunately it does mean that I will keep hoping that these movies will slap in Mothra at some point.
And just as we're transitioning to a new James Bond with Timothy Dalton, 1985 gave us a new Godzilla suit actor, Kenpachiro Satsuma, who first appeared as Hedorah in Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster.
Damn straight.
He donned the brand new sinister Godzilla costume from 1984 to the end of the Heisei era in 1995. Satsuma states, I want people to think of this Godzilla as a real animal. The Godzilla costume in 1985 was made to fit a man who was larger than I am. This, along with the fact that the costume weighed 245 pounds, limited what I could do in it. In Biollante, the costume was made to fit me, and it weighed only 180 pounds. Whenever Godzilla does roaring, spewing his radiation breath, I always try to add little movements that will show his emotional state, like moving his fingers or a short glance.
Very nice. I really liked the eye shots in this movie of Godzilla.
Which is all, what is it? The mechanical...
Animatronic.
Was it the animatronic one they had?
I mean, it's not the same one, but they had his suit, but then they also had a head to move around and do all that stuff.
It looks really good.
Yeah.
It really does.
He does a lot of, like, glaring and, like, eyes widening. And
He
just
gives
looks
the
like,
Kubrick
what
look.
the fuck?
He gives the Kubrick look a couple times.
Yeah. Okay, continuing in some of the greatest elements of this movie, our opinions on my favorite kaiju next to Godzilla, Biollante, and all her wonderful kaiju beauty.
I dig Biollante. It's got that right combination of terrifying, yet menacing, yet strangely kind of majestic.
Like, I feel like her
And then turns into a heavy metal album cover.
Yeah. I feel
Yeah.
I feel like her similarity to Godzilla is just the perfect mix of like plant and lizard kaiju, and just like something that she's so well designed. Like I feel like she definitely looks like something out of a Resident Evil game. One of the better ones.
Like
of
I
course.
was.
I honestly am. I liked it. I liked her a lot. I wanted more.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think
that's the thing that bugs me the most is that she didn't do enough.
I do agree. My biggest problem with Godzilla versus Biollante is that there's not enough Biollante.
Yeah.
She's gone for like almost 2/3 of the movie, but like
Yeah.
she almost makes up for it just by being cool enough to like pierce Godzilla's hand.
Oh my god, that was the best scene in the movie.
That was that.
Yeah, I wish I was recording that because all three of you guys just went,
Yeah.
One of the things I really liked about this movie is that the use of that kind of green blood for
Yeah.
Biollante allowed them to be just so visceral. Like,
It's very viscous and gooey looking.
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
almost it's almost like watery gack.
it's able
almost like
to-
xenomorph blood, like there's
Yeah.
smoke and everything. Yeah.
and it's able to bring in kind of this kind of gory, violent, visceral feel without having to go as deeply gory as, say, Hedorah did.
Right.
It's kind of like that lovely PG gore that you can get away with.
Or as one of the titles before the film started was that little PG rating, and then in the description it just said classic Godzilla violence.
That classic Godzilla violence.
And personally, like, I love all of her forms, but I have a soft spot for just, like, people make fun of the fact that, yeah, you light the rose on fire and it dies, but there's just something about a giant rose that is crying that it's so
creepy.
unique. It's incredibly unique, and I don't think that there's any other creature like Biollante
Like
as we continue.
like you look at the silhouette and the way it juts out of that lake, and it's like I said, like majestic. There's a beauty to it. But then as you zoom in closer, you start to see the grotesque, misshapen form of the roots and tendrils. Then it pans up and you see the teeth in the center of the rose. So it's just this beautiful thing, but the closer you get, the more horrifying it becomes.
Yeah, like from afar, it's almost a serene monster. And Cruz, you say this monster was designed probably in both forms, right? By a dentist? And I easily believe you on that front.
Well, like because she went through a lot of different renditions. The earliest one was like a giant flower with a woman's face as like the bud of it.
Oh my god.
So,
It's like the face stealer from Avatar.
oh my God, you're right. Much like America had Drew Struzan to make some of the most iconic movie posters during the 80s and 90s, Japan had artistic genius Noriyoshi Orai. Among many of his works, he was the poster artist for Japan's release of Star Wars, the Metal Gear Solid series, and of course, the Godzilla series, starting with Godzilla 1985 and finishing with Godzilla Final Wars.
Dude, I like legit want like this poster. 'Cause
I
it looks
do,
fucking
too.
Awesome.
Dude, I mean, this honestly looks like the cover of like a heavy metal album.
Yeah, more heavy metal goodness.
The only reason why I don't have this poster is because the official one has this giant Japanese banner in the lower right corner with the date that it was coming out on, and it just like, go away, I don't want you.
And for some
You
reason,
want the clean picture.
for some reason, Godzilla posters seem to like to do that.
So this was his work for 85.
That is so
Oh, dude.
cool. That's badass.
That is
What a
cool. Do
beaut.
you have a poster of that?
I would, but my own personal taste go, it's too much for my room.
Cruz, so you have a picture of it. Why haven't you like made like a $40 print?
Because
It's so green,
pixels don't
no.
translate to 24 by 36 and FedEx charges money.
Going back to the different the monsters having more unique appearances and powers, and going into being able to transform into higher forms, you can definitely all of that influence still exists in Japanese pop culture
Yeah.
today. That's still I'm thinking, Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon, that influence is still highly relevant. So like more than ever this era, if the previous era was, pro wrestling matches, these new battles are like Pokemon battles.
These new battles are going even further beyond.
Like
Yes.
Pokemon battles mixed with like body horror for the contestants.
Would you like to nickname your Biollante?
Would you like to nickname your
Rose.
monstrosity? Just name it Nummy Muffin Cuckoo Butter. Actually, wait, have I named my Bulbasaur Biollante? I think I have.
Hell yes.
As we were talking about Pokemon, this just occurred to me. I'm wondering if this movie has any reason to the fact that in Generation 1, the grass-type gym leader is Erica.
Interesting.
Wait, I'm sorry. What's the connection here?
Erica's the name of his daughter in the movie.
the daughter of the scientist who got turned into Biollante. Her name was Erica.
I have to do something, or else Erica will die. And because Biollante is one of the few Godzilla movies that actually has quite a lot of great behind-the-scenes features, I did decide to put a little compilation of them so you can see movie magic. Yeah, I do wish that they kept this in because honestly, this movie possesses, especially the violins, it possesses so much beauty with Biollante, and it's not just about destruction, it's about life.
Yeah, it definitely would have benefited from like one or two more tranquil scenes.
This scene is like a heartbreaking type
Yeah.
scene. I would have loved this.
No, I'm getting kind of early Disney vibes, early Disney, like Bambi era kind of a thing.
Like this is giving me the vibes of like Gundam shows when the character is kind of trapped in a place where they're just looking at the stars. There's a break in the action, and they're just kind of left with their own thoughts and emotions on how things are going and how their life is.
That's why this movie has new types!
Pretty much.
Like this is really cool and fascinating to me, but I'm almost like, this is ruining Godzilla.
the magic.
Yeah.
What?
No, it's so fucking cool, but I'm like,
No, there's always that weird kind of feeling you get once you remember that the Godzilla you're seeing on screen is just a human and everything else is just really small.
But I mean, it does like.
That's why I was honestly hesitant. Like, should I show them this? Because they might be children at this point. They might get their hearts broken.
Yum.
Oh, that looks so awesome!
Oh,
Holy shit!
whoa!
okay.
What was that? Like a promotional short, or
No, this would have been the ending.
Holy-
It would have
Yeah.
turned into an anime.
holy?
I mean, I think I like the ending we got better still, but that still looks so fucking cool.
Fucking awesome.
looks
late 80s anime.
Yeah,
It looks so fucking cool.
Oh my god, peak awesome late 80s anime. Like, I wish they could have used that some way, because that couldn't have been cheap.
And then just as a final note to wrap up some of the other things I love about this movie, it's just the wholehearted uniquity of Amori's script that makes me love the movie so much like how Smog Monster's standout story and approach was so unique. Biollante is the only Heisei film that seems to shed a light on the dangers of genetic engineering while also weaving in a sentimental family story with Erica's soul being a part of the monster. And as hokey as it is, I love seeing Erica's face ascending to the sky, and I
like
love
that
seeing the
part.
giant rose in space.
I like that part.
There's something inherently Japanese about that just works.
But to me, it's just I wish there was more solid to the movie as a whole for me to have really been able to appreciate that a bit more.
Yeah.
Solid in what way?
Just more Biollante, more understanding of, honestly, 2-part movie.
Oh,
That'd be interesting,
a
yeah.
part
That'd be
1 and a part
interesting,
2.
yeah. That'd be interesting.
That's what this needed, I think. I feel like I would have really liked being able to have 3 hours of this as opposed to an hour and a half?
Yeah.
Give more room for Biollante to have the anime ending she deserves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and give the human characters. Let us meet the daughter a bit more before she just dies in the explosion. Let us let us understand the relationship between her and the dad a bit more. Did she help out in the lab? What did she, Like, I wanted more everything.
I mean, to be fair, they already put a lot of effort into this movie.
Except
and
for
apparently they did
Super
have to
X2.
cut
We can
quite
do
a bit
less
out.
Super X2.
True.
Epic saga. with-
Biollante
Yes.
and the Deathly Hollows.
Yes.
Yeah, Deathly Hallows Part 1, Part 2, just...
I know.
I wanted more.
I'm just thinking of Godzilla like swinging a wand and it's like the subtitles to say Avada Kedavra and just atomic breath.
I know when I was, watching the end of this film, that ending with the ascension and the rose and all that, my mind jumped to one of the first things that Cruz essentially made to like how he defines the series with those three S's, and so like I'm watching this and like that's. You do see it. There is the science with the bioengineering, and there is the spirituality of the psychic energy and the soul in the plant and their space.
Oh my god. Yeah. So that's why this movie won the contest. The best Godzilla movie. Yeah, you're right. Oh my god. That's absolutely correct. Yeah. I love the random use of pop culture references in the film. We cut to that awesome demon guy that just interrupts the movie.
I imagine that he's like a well-known celebrity at the time.
He is a heavy metal musician and entertainer known as Demon Kaka, who also did the Japanese dub for Jack Nicholson's Joker.
Oh, sweet.
Huh, wow.
And of course, I didn't do much research on it, but there's that random pop song that plays when the POV shot goes from the ocean and it starts going.
Yeah,
and we're like, what the fuck is happening?
And it says concert has been canceled.
Yeah, the
after
concert's
that.
been canceled. And it's like,
right. I remember
okay.
that.
One of the other reasons why I love the first half of the Heisei series is because late 80s, early 90s Japan is best Japan. It's their music, it's their business suits, it's their cars, it's their interior design. It's right in the sweet spot before they became more pristine and 21st centuryized.
How have we not brought up the lounge with the Godzilla's footstep in it?
I fucking love it.
Oh,
I
yeah, the
fucking
Godzilla lounge.
love it.
The,
amazing.
The Godzilla Survivors Lounge or whatever.
Yeah.
The memorial. Yeah. Even as a kid, I'm like, I want to be there and I want to listen to piano music and I want to have a dinner and
And I want to get stepped on.
the interior design of that place. I fucking love. So, Jake, would you recommend James Bond in the Danger Zone or Godzilla vs. Biollante to a first-time viewer?
I would 100% recommend His Name is Danger. Yeah, I'm going to say yes to both of these. Dalton, both of his movies, underrated, but getting more and more love and attention as time passes. And I'd say if you're already familiar with the Craig films and you like the feeling of the Craig films, Dalton is a great next stepping on point because there are several similarities in tone and direction there. But otherwise, Living Daylights is a great spy thriller. Dalton, really good in it. I would say that this is definitely a really awesome film to dip your toes into. I'm going to say yes to Biollante as well. Just, the plot, little convoluted, little hard to follow. So is Living Daylights in a lot of ways. But the Biollante itself as a creature is such a fascinating, interesting, awesome monster that I feel that Biollante just herself is enough for the price of admission. So I would say that, it would, I think there'd be no problem with jumping into Biollante to kind of get a feel for Godzilla.
Congratulations, Jake. You convinced me to change my answer from no to yes for Biollante.
Amazing.
The look of offense on Cruz's face.
The main reason I say yes to both now. Pretty much everything Jake said about Living Daylights. I was on the fence about Biollante mainly because of the just not being as for my taste not being satisfied enough with the overall Biollante movie because of the stuff that I mentioned earlier. But honestly, ignoring that, the concepts and the ideas and everything presented in this film for Biollante is honestly some of the strongest in the series so far.
Living Daylights, great movie. If you're into tense action scenes, it might actually scare the living daylights out of you at some points. They cut out a goofy looking scene that would have been fun to watch anyway, but if that's the kind of stuff they're cutting out, the stuff they left in is definitely phenomenal. Godzilla vs. Biollante, probably easily the high point, even after 1985. Definitely recommend both for first-time viewing to get you hooked into both of these respective series.
Well, since Jake has been so nice, I guess I will say yes for Living Daylights. It may not be a personal favorite, but there isn't necessarily anything against it that I would say, no, don't go into it. It serves its purpose. If you're a fan of Timothy Dalton, you'll get exactly what you're hoping for. I do think there are better in the series, but there isn't necessarily anything bad about it that would be offensive if you were to go into it for the first time. And for Godzilla vs. Biollante, as weird and different and strange as it is, I see no reason to not go into it as a first film. I think it's a tremendous example of what the studio took a chance on and experimented with and had a lot of fresh, unique ideas and is a good way to enter the Heisei era.
Next time on James Bond, it's take two for Timothy as 007 goes on a bloody rampage of vengeance in what is often considered the darkest film in the franchise. James Bond will return in License to Kill.
And next time on Godzilla, we enter the beautiful 90s with cyborgs, time travel, and Chaz's greatest personal fear: Japan becoming a superpower.
No.
The Golden Death returns in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. Thank you all for listening to Bond vs. Godzilla. We'll see you next time with a martini in one hand and a rubber suit in the other.
Stay tuned and stay watching.
How long have we been living in such an age? Maybe it started when man first stepped out of the Garden of Eden and left his innocence behind. Man would do well to remember this day forever.